The scent was the first betrayal. Not the familiar, comforting perfume of old paper, leather, and lemon oil, but something sharp, synthetic, and fizzy. Energy drink and dust-off. I paused on the landing, my hand tightening on the banister. The library door, always respectfully closed, stood ajar. From within came not the profound cathedral hush I cherished, but the tinny, rapid-fire chatter of a video game and a boy's frustrated grunt. "Mom, I can't hear. Tell her to be quiet out there." I stepped into the doorway. My library, my husband Arthur's library, our library, was unrecognizable. The two great Chesterfield armchairs, worn to buttery softness by decades of reading, were shoved into a corner, piled with beanbag chairs in neon green and black. My mahogany partner's desk was now a command center for 3 glaring computer monitors, cables snaking across the Persian rug like technological vines. The books! My God, the books! They were still on the shelves, but they were now mere backdrop, shoved aside to make room for action figurines, garish LED light strips, and a massive framed poster of some snarling, armored character. In the center of it all, cocooned in a high-backed gaming throne, was my grandson, Kyle, 17, all limbs and resentment, a headset clamped over his ears. He didn't see me. He was somewhere else, shouting commands to unseen comrades. My daughter, Elise, appeared behind me, wringing a dish towel. "Mom, there you are. Sorry about the noise. Kyle's in a tournament. It's really important." I couldn't speak. My eyes traveled the room, cataloging the violations. A mug with a dried brown ring sat on a first edition of For Whom the Bell Tolls. A greasy pizza box was balanced on the edge of the atlas stand, perilously close to the 1892 survey map of the county Arthur had so loved. "A tournament?" I echoed, my voice faint. "Yes, for Apex Conquest. He's ranked in the top 500 nationally. His team depends on him." She said this with a blend of apology and pride, as if he were a concert cellist practicing. "This is the library," I said, the words tasting of dust. "Well, we needed to maximize space," Elise said, her tone shifting to practical, the one she used when explaining why my antique china should be stored and replaced with dishwasher-safe stoneware. "You know, we hardly ever used this room. It was just sitting here." Just sitting here, like a lung just sits in a chest, like a heart just sits in a body. "Where is Arthur's chair?" I asked. "His reading chair. The one by the window with the good northern light, where he'd sat for 40 years with his evening scotch and his history books. It was gone." "Oh, we moved that to the basement rec room. It was looking a little shabby, Mom. This furniture is more ergonomic for him, for his back." They had exiled Arthur's chair to the damp basement, a place of ping-pong tables and forgotten exercise equipment. The rage that rose in me was so sudden, so hot, it stole my breath. But I was Virginia Stone, widow, former professor of literature. I did not have shouting matches in hallways. I metabolized fury into ice. "I see," I said, and turned away before she could see the tremor in my hands. Back in my sitting room, the one room they had yet to optimize, I felt the walls of the house, my house for 45 years, close in on me. They had moved in temporarily after the last housing market crash had decimated David's construction business 2 years ago. Elise, my gentle, anxious daughter, David, her husband, whose booming voice now filled every room, and Kyle, their sullen prince. They had seeped into the house's fabric like a spill, spreading, claiming. It had been gradual, the redecorating of the guest room into their room, the takeover of the garage for David's tools and unsold job materials, the comments about the wasted potential of the formal dining room, and now the library, the sanctum. That night, over a dinner I barely tasted, David held forth. "Vern, we need to talk about the house." He called me Vern. I hated it. "These old places, they're money pits. The roof needs attention, the wiring is pre-war, and the property taxes, brutal." Elise nodded along, pushing her food around her plate. "We were thinking, Mom, about your future. Your future. This place is a lot for you." "I manage," I said, cutting a piece of chicken with surgical precision. "But you shouldn't have to manage," David said, leaning forward, his voice oozing concern. "We found a place, Sunset Meadows. It's not assisted living, it's independent living. A cute little villa. Lawn care, security, a community. You'd love it." "And it would free up this asset," David continued, as if picking up a cue. "We could sell, clear a hefty profit, use some of it to get me back on my feet with a new business, something solid, maybe property management. The rest could go into a nice annuity for you, Vern. Safe, secure, no worries." They had it all figured out. My house, my equity, my history, liquefied into their fresh start. The library was just phase one, the clearing of the chessboard before the main game. "This is my home," I said, my voice quiet but clear in the sudden silence. "Of course it is, Mom," Elise said quickly, shooting David a look. "But homes can be burdens. We just want what's best for everyone." Everyone. The word hung there, a shiny, inclusive bauble hiding a fist. "I'll think about it," I lied. I had never lied to my daughter before. Later, in the deep silence of 2 a.m., I went to the library. I turned on a single, small lamp. In the eerie glow of the LED strips, the room was a grotesque parody of itself. I walked to the shelf that held Arthur's collection of Victorian medical texts. I pulled on a specific, nondescript volume, a treatise on hysterical disorders, and the entire section, books and all, swung inward with a soft, well-oiled sigh. Behind it was not a safe, but a small, windowless alcove Arthur had designed during the 1970s renovation, a panic room for his rare book collection. It was lined with climate-controlled glass cases, now mostly empty, but on a simple wooden desk in the center sat a banker's box. I lifted the lid. Here was the true heart of the house, the documents that gave the lie to David's bluster about assets and equity. The deed, not in my name alone, but held by the Stone Family Literary Trust. I was the lifetime beneficiary and the sole trustee. Arthur, the historian, had been even more meticulous than I'd known. The trust owned the house, the land, everything. I could live here until I died. After that, the trust dictated the house be donated to the university's English department as a writer's residency, with an endowment for its upkeep. Elise would receive a separate, generous cash inheritance, but the house itself was untouchable. He had seen the future. He had seen David. But there was more. Arthur had been a quiet, brilliant investor. The trust wasn't just a piece of paper. It was funded. Monthly statements from a private fiduciary showed a portfolio of blue-chip stocks and municipal bonds. The numbers were substantial. They paid the property taxes, the insurance, the upkeep. They provided a monthly stipend to me. David, in his financial panic, had no idea this financial engine even existed. He saw an old woman and a leaky roof. He didn't see the fortress. I traced the embossed seal of the trust with my finger. Arthur's voice seemed to whisper from the paper. "They can't sell what isn't theirs, Ginny." But they could make my life a living hell until I surrendered. The library was proof. I needed a plan, not just a document. I needed to weaponize his foresight. The next morning, I called the one person outside the family who knew about the trust, Arthur's old lawyer, Julian Thackeray. His voice, when he came on the line, was like gravel and dry sherry. "Virginia, I've been expecting your call." "Have you, Julian?" The moment I heard David's business had gone under, I knew the vultures would circle. The library, I presume. Transformed into an arcade. He made a sound of disgust. "Philistines. What do you need?" "I need to activate the trust, fully, not just as a shield, as a statement of terms." "Ah, you wish to go from defense to a delineation of borders. Excellent. The trust gives you, as trustee, absolute discretion over the use of the property. You can set conditions for their continued residence. Legally, they are your licensees, not co-owners. You can revoke that license for any reason, with reasonable notice. I don't want to evict my daughter, I said, the pain sharp. Then we give them a new lease, one they have to sign, one that protects the library and everything else. We make the invisible lines visible in ink. Julian drafted the document. He called it a gracious license to reside. It was a masterpiece of legal clarity and psychological warfare. It listed by room the permitted and prohibited uses. The library shall be used solely for quiet study, reading, and the preservation of the existing collection. No electronic gaming, food, or beverage consumption permitted. Furnishings shall not be altered or removed. It designated quiet hours from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m. It assigned cleaning responsibilities. It stated that any damage to trust property would be deducted from Elisa's eventual inheritance. Most crucially, it stated that violation of any term constituted grounds for immediate revocation of the license and a 30-day notice to vacate. It was, in essence, a declaration that this was my house and they were guests. Ungrateful guests. I waited for a night when David was out at a networking event. I asked Elise to come to the sitting room. Kyle was thumping around upstairs. "What's this?" she asked, looking at the thick document I handed her. "The new rules of the house," I said. She scanned the first page, her face paling. "Mom, this is insane. This is so hostile." "No, Elise. Hostile is converting your father's library into a gaming den. Hostile is planning to sell my home out from under me. This is just house rules. For my house. We're family. You can't give us a lease. You've been treating my home like a hotel you plan to buy and flip. This clarifies the arrangement. You are living here at my sufferance. You will respect the property, or you will leave." Her eyes filled with tears. "David will never sign this." "Then David will need to find a new place to live. You can choose to go with him, or you can choose to stay under these terms. But Kyle's computers are out of the library by tomorrow." David's reaction that night was volcanic. I heard it from my room. The roar of disbelief, the crash of something thrown against a wall, Elise's pleading sobs. He stormed down the hall and threw open my door without knocking. "What is this garbage?" he bellowed, waving the document. "The law of the land," I said. "My land." "You miserable, selfish old crone. After all we've done for you, we're family." "Family doesn't plot to put their mother in a retirement villa and sell her bones," I said, my voice colder than I thought possible. "Sign it, David, or pack." He loomed over me, his face purple with rage. "You can't do this. I'll fight you. I'll get a lawyer. I'll have you declared incompetent. Everyone can see you're losing it, Vern. Talking to yourself, hiding in your room. It's only a matter of time before you leave the stove on or wander off." The threat hung in the air, ugly and real. It was their nuclear option, a petition for conservatorship. If a doctor could be persuaded. I looked up at him, meeting his furious gaze without blinking. "Try it, David. I have Arthur's lawyers, Arthur's trust, and Arthur's money. You have a bankruptcy filing and a temper. See how far you get." For a long moment, I thought he might hit me. The violence in his eyes was plain. Then, with a curse, he turned and stomped away. The war was declared. The next week was a Cold War of stunning pettiness. They signed the document, a shock, but their compliance was a mockery. Kyle moved his computers, but the thumping bass from his room above mine became a constant, rhythmic assault. David, accidentally, broke the antique French press that had been Arthur's. Elise stopped cooking for me, only making meals for the family.
I ate alone in my sitting room, listening to their laughter from the kitchen. They were trying to break my spirit, to make me so miserable I'd capitulate. They didn't understand that the library had been my breaking point. There was nothing left to break. I executed phase 2. I called Julian. It's time for the endowment to make itself known. The stipend? I asked. No, the house itself. I want you to contact the university, tell them about the future writer's residency, ask if they'd like to send a graduate student in literature over once a week to begin cataloging the collection in preparation for the bequest. Make it sound collaborative, academic. A young woman named Anya arrived the following Tuesday. She was all bright eyes and reverence. Professor Stone, it's an honor. Your work on the Brontes is still taught, you know. I led her to the library. We had, with glacial slowness, begun to restore it. The neon was gone, the computers were gone, but the soul was still wounded. Anya's presence was a balm. She touched the books with care. She gasped at our first edition of Jane Eyre. She spent hours making meticulous notes. Her presence drove David and Kyle insane. Her quiet, her respect, was a silent indictment of their vandalism. They skulked around her, unable to complain without looking like barbarians. Then I invited the head of the English department, Dr. Evans, for tea, and the dean of faculty. I gave them a tour, showing them Arthur's vision for the residency. They were effusive, delighted.
Their presence filled the house with a different energy, one of legacy, permanence, intellectual weight. David, forced to make small talk with the dean, looked like a trapped animal. The final move was financial. I had Julian send a formal letter to David and Elise. As part of the prudent management of the Stone Family Literary Trust, an independent appraisal of all trust property, including furnishings and collections, will be conducted next month. Please ensure all personal items are removed from trust-owned rooms to facilitate the assessment. The subtext was clear. We are itemizing everything you might break. We are defining, in monetary terms, the cost of your wrath. The pressure was working, but David was a cornered rat. I came home one afternoon from a walk to find Anya in tears in the library. Kyle had accidentally bumped into her, sending a stack of her note cards flying and cracking the glass of a framed 18th century botanical print. He said it was just old junk, she sobbed. That was it. The last thread of my patience snapped. I didn't confront Kyle. I didn't scream at David. I went to my alcove, retrieved the trust documents, and drove to Julian's office. File the eviction notice, I said, for all of them. 30 days. Breach of contract, destruction of trust property, creating a hostile environment. Virginia, Elise, is married to him. She chooses him every day in every silent acquiescence. She made her choice. Now I'm making mine. The papers were served the next day by a uniformed sheriff's deputy. The scene was everything you'd imagine. David's sputtering, incoherent rage, Elise's collapse into hysterical sobs, screaming that I was tearing the family apart, Kyle's stunned, entitled confusion. "You can't do this," David roared at me as the deputy left. "It's already done," I said. I held up a set of deadbolts I'm having installed today on the library, the dining room, and my private quarters. For the next 30 days. Touch anything else and I call the deputy back and have you removed for trespass. I turned to Elise, who was weeping on the stairs. You have a choice, Elise. You can spend the next 30 days helping your husband pack and find an apartment, or you can spend them with me, helping me restore your father's house. But you cannot do both. It was the cruelest thing I'd ever said, and the most necessary. She looked at me, her face a mask of betrayal, then buried it in her hands. The 30 days were a dirge. Movers came and went, taking David's tools, Kyle's gaming rig, their aggressively modern furniture. David found a cheap apartment across town. Elise moved like a ghost through the house. She didn't speak to me. She packed her things in a terrible, silent grief.
The day they left, David stood on the front porch with his belongings in a rented truck. "You'll die alone in this mausoleum," he spat, "and when you do, I'll contest that trust until there's nothing left but lawyers' fees. I'll see this place bulldozed." "You'll try," I said, and closed the door. Elise was the last to leave. She stood in the foyer with a single suitcase. The house was eerily quiet, the way it had been before the crash, before the temporary became permanent. "I don't understand you," she whispered. "You didn't try," I replied, my heart a block of ice in my chest. "You saw what he was doing and you dropped your gaze. That's what I can't forgive." A tear traced a path through her powder. "He's my husband, and I was your mother." I handed her a sealed envelope. "This is from the trust. It's the cash inheritance you were always meant to have, early. Use it to get on your feet, without him." She took it, her fingers trembling. She looked like my little girl again, scared and lost. But she was a woman who chose her battlefield and lost. She walked out without a backward glance. The silence that descended was absolute. It rang in my ears. I walked from room to empty room, my footsteps echoing. I ended up in the library. I righted the botanical print. I sank into Arthur's chair, which I'd had brought back up from the basement. I breathed in the scent, old paper, leather, lemon oil, slowly returning. I had won. I had secured my home, my legacy, my peace. The fortress was intact. So why did I feel utterly, desolately ruined?
Weeks passed. The university people came, began earnest plans. Anya continued her cataloging. The house was clean, quiet, perfect. And I was dying inside. The ice that had sustained me was melting, leaving a swamp of grief. I missed my daughter. I missed the chaos of family, even the toxic kind. I had fought for a principle and incinerated the reality. One rainy afternoon, as I was shelving books Anya had sorted, I found it, tucked inside Arthur's copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, a slip of paper in his handwriting. "My dearest Jenny, if you are reading this, I am gone, and you are likely facing the practical people. Remember, a fortress is only as strong as the heart inside it. Do not let them make a fortress of your heart. The library is just a room. The trust is just paper. You are my life's work. Be wise, but be kind, even to the vandals, especially then. They know not what they do. All my love, always. Arthur." I sat on the library floor, the note in my hand, and wept for the first time since his funeral. I wept for the loss, for the hardness I'd cultivated, for the daughter I'd exiled. He had given me the weapons to fight and the commandment to lay them down when the battle was won. It took me 3 more days to gather the courage. I called her. She answered on the 4th ring. "Mom?" Her voice was small, wary. "The library is restored," I said, my own voice thick. "But it's too quiet. Anya says there's a first edition of Pride and Prejudice with marginalia that might be Austen period. She needs a second pair of eyes, a familial perspective." A long silence. I could hear her breathing. "David and I were separated. He's contesting it. It's ugly." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. Another silence. Then, softly, "What time should I come over?" She came the next day. She didn't ring the bell. She just walked in, as if she'd never left. But slowly, hesitantly. She went straight to the library. She stood in the doorway, taking it in. The books, the chair, the quiet. "It's beautiful again," she whispered. "It's home," I said, "and you are welcome in it. As a guest, with rules, but welcome." She walked to the shelf, ran a finger along a familiar spine, and finally looked at me. Her eyes were full of a complex, painful understanding. "I'm sorry, Mom, for the library, for everything. I'm sorry I had to be the wall, but I couldn't be the doormat." She nodded.
a single tear escaping. "Can I make us some tea?" "Yes," I said. "That would be lovely." She went to the kitchen. I heard the familiar clatter of the kettle, the china cups. It was not a surrender on either side. It was an armistice, negotiated on new borders. The house was mine. The trust was inviolate. But the door was open, just a crack, for the possibility of something fragile and new to grow in the space between the lines. I looked around the library at the walls that had held fast. Arthur was right. They were just walls. The real work was the heart inside them, and that, it seemed, was a project that was never quite finished.